A little over a month ago, we had Payday 3's first anniversary, marking over 1 year since the game's release back in 2023. Strangely enough though, we haven't been given any sort of roadmap as to what DLC heists we'll be seeing in the second year of the game. Sure, we've had First World Bank accidentally be leaked, but we haven't actually been given a campaign roadmap like we did for the first year. It's not entirely doom and gloom though, as because we have no idea whatsoever what the heists are going to be, it actually leaves a lot of room for us to speculate and to theorise as to what the heist could be. So, to try and get inspiration for heist ideas, I went to an airport to go on a plane and didn't go to America, I actually went to Germany. Yeah, my sister's uni graduation was at the same time that I started working on this video. I almost tricked you though, didn't I? While I was over in Germany though, I started to think about what heists I'd be wanting to see in year 2 for Payday 3. Very quickly, I realised that something I was wanting to see and really wanting to lean into while I was coming up with these heist ideas was just New York itself. For a game set in New York, we haven't hit many landmarks, and I honestly think that's quite disappointing, especially since we didn't have any heists based off landmarks in Payday the Heist either, despite the fact that the game was also set in New York. Outside of the New York Financial Exchange and Fear and Greed, we haven't hit anything that really screams New York. I've never visited New York before, much less the United States as a whole, unless you count that bit of water at Niagara Falls that's technically in the States, but even as an outsider there are so many landmarks I can think of that are in the Big Apple. It may or may not be helped by the fact that I've sunk a fair few hours into the Insomniac Spider-Man games, but that's neither here nor there. I decided to sit down and think, and I decided on 4 places in New York that I think would make for interesting heists, similar to the DLC campaign structure we had in year 1. It's unclear whether or not we'll be having the same 4 heist DLC campaign structure for year 2, but I decided to go with it when I was theorising the heist just because it's what we've had so far, and it's also a fairly reasonable structure to work with. Before I share my ideas though, I want to clarify some things. Firstly, these aren't fully comprehensive heist ideas. While I do have full ideas for the settings and the objectives in the heist, I don't have stuff like fully in-depth map layouts planned, as it'd be a lot of extra effort for something that there'd be little to no reason to actually do so, as these are just concepts. And also, it's going to be a bit hard for me to convey my ideas, as my artistic capabilities are extremely limited, to put it lightly, and I can't find pictures of everything as well, so you're going to have to do quite a bit of creative legwork in that regard. With the disclaimer said and done, let's just get into the first heist, where I figured there'd be no better place to start off with than a heist in none other than Grand Central Terminal. Being built in 1913, Grand Central Terminal is almost a time capsule to the past with its beautiful bourgeois architectural style, and it's an iconic piece of New York in its history, making it an excellent place for the gang to hit. The premise for the heist would be simple. One high-value cargo train is making a stop at Grand Central, and when I say high value, I mean high value. This train would be carrying some extremely valuable weaponry alongside physical and digital schematics of them meant for the US military. Of course, it'd be a waste if only the military were going to be getting their hands on these weapons, so the Payday gang are going to hit the train while it's making a scheduled stop at the station. These types of trains passing through Grand Central wouldn't be too realistic, as in reality the station is only used for passenger trains, but when given the choice between something being realistic and something being cool, I'm going to go with the latter. Shade contracts this job, as it's just a fairly standard heist for the gang. Like most heists in Payday 3, you'd be able to tackle this heist in both stealth and in loud. To start off with, you begin right at the entrance inside the station, met with the beautiful sight of the main concourse. The actual main concourse of Grand Central is quite open, so there'd of course have to be a few creative liberties taken, such as there being more information kiosk, big benches, fencing, and of course, massive bulletproof suitcases that you can hide behind. Assuming you mask up straight away and start shooting, the entire station would go into lockdown, with the train shed being locked behind gates. To gain access to the train shed, you'll have to drill open one of the gates and then vault over the ticket barriers. I understand this might be a bridge too far for some people. We've blown up bridges with people on them, committed literal electoral fraud and even raided the White House, but dodging train fares? That's completely reprehensible. But I've got to ask you to stay with me on this, as I do believe that the ends justify the means, even if it is as abhorrent as this. Moving on from the worst crime the Payday gang has and will ever commit, there's the cargo train inside the shed, as well as a few extra passenger trains. The passenger trains act as both extra places to play around and to hide in if you need to take cover, as well as a way to get extra civilians. Because, you know, it's a passenger train, it's going to have people on it. Similarly to the main concourse, there'd be a lot of cover added to the platforms in the trains, as well as them being a lot wider than they would be in reality, as I imagine that playing around narrow trains and platforms wouldn't be the most fun thing in the world. Once you've found the cargo train, you're going to have one of 2 ways to open the train up, either with thermite or with a winch. With the thermite, there will be a bag of thermite stashed inside a random maintenance room on the platforms indicated by it being covered in a cautionary do not enter tape. After getting the thermite and going back to the train, you'd set up on one of the doors and then set it alight. Of course, to speed up the process, additional thermite would be chucked through the skylights in the main concourse hall, similarly to how it's handled in No Rest for the Wicked. You'd have to keep an eye on the fire alarms in and around the platforms though, as the cops are going to be trying to pull them to stop the thermite with the sprinklers. If the alarm is pulled and the sprinklers go off, it will slow down the thermite and you'll have to go to the fire alarm control panel to turn them off. Similarly, the winch will be in a random maintenance room marked by cautionary tape and will be made up of by 3 bags. The first bag will be the frame, the second will be the drum, and the third one will be the cable and the hook, alongside the electrical motor. I had to actually look up and learn a bit of winch terminology for that one, so I guess every day is a school day, especially for coming up with heist plans. You'll then have to hook up the winch's motor to one of the train engines to power it up, similar to how the tow truck and the generator work in Boys in Blue. The winch can be interrupted by cops sabotaging the winch's motor itself, as well as them disconnecting it from the train's engine. If it gets interrupted, you'll have to turn the winch back on or reconnect the power supply. After breaching the train and opening it up, you'll be met with armoured resistance on the train from military-type people, who would just be normal cops but given a slight makeover, kinda like the murky water units back in Payday 2. The higher the difficulty, the heavier and tougher the resistance will be. For example, on Overkill, there'd be heavy SWATs and a bulldozer waiting for you inside the train, similarly to First World Bank and its scripted bulldozer spawns inside the vault. Once you've gotten yourself inside the train and all the security has been cleared out, it's time to start bagging out the weapons as well as their schematics. There's servers on the train which have backups of the schematics as well, but we'll be coming back to those later. One of the passenger trains will be delegated as being the escape train, so you have to secure the weapons and their schematics inside of it. Yeah, for a Heist set in Grand Central, it seemed like a bit of a no-brainer to have the escape method be a train itself. After securing all the loot required, you'll have quite a lengthy escape process. Firstly, Bio will drop 2 bags, a bag of C4 and then an EMP. Once the bags have been dropped, you'll be able to fry the servers on the train by placing down and then activating the EMP. Then, you'll have to lower the barriers that popped up over the train tracks. This is mostly just to give an explanation as to why the trains didn't just leave the station, as when the alarm tripped, the barriers came up on the tracks, which trapped them inside the shed. After the barriers are down, you'll have to place the C4 you picked up in critical places around the platform, which once they go off will cause the platform to collapse so that the cops won't be able to follow the train from the shed. After they've all been placed, you'll all have to get inside the escape train. Once you're inside the train, the explosions will start to go off, and you'll quickly have to make your way to the front of the train, starting it up and getting it moving so that you can make your escape. As for stealth on the heist, it would only be possible to complete it in maskless stealth. I didn't originally intend for this, but it was pretty hard to try and come up with ways that you could stealth around a train station with dozens, if not hundreds of people inside of it. I think it'd also make the heist interesting in that regard, as there are many heists that are only completable by masking up, but we haven't had the inverse. Of course, it would still be possible from a literal sense to mask up and do the objectives, so I guess it'd just be more of a case where the heist is very much designed for you not to do it, but if you're sadomasochistic enough, you still can. The first objective though would be to gain access to the train shed. As funny as it would be to just be able to buy a ticket, sacrificing some of your cash for the sake of being able to skip an objective, you'll actually have to steal a ticket. You'll have to lockpick a door into the ticket office and then crack a safe which will have the tickets inside. Once you've gotten your ticket, you're free to go on into the train shed. You'll have to find the cargo train itself and then give Shade access to the electricity within the train itself. You'd first have to do a hack on a control panel on the side of the train. After gaining access to the train's electricity, you'll have to go around and find wire boxes, pulling the correct switches in order to disable the external power supply that the train gets from the station's grid. Once you've taken down all the wire boxes, you'll need to return to the train and interact with the control panel again, fully pulling the power on the train. You'll then have to wait a moment for all the security to make their way out of the train. It's not as simple as just going into the train after they've all left though, as there's a separate circuit inside the train itself that handles the security, which means you'll need to grab a keycard to gain access. Only issue is that these keycards are on the members of the security team themselves, and they walk around in groups, so being able to just snatch one off them is going to be difficult. However, there's plenty of laws in and around the platforms in the concourse hall, so being able to distract them and split them up will be made significantly easier. After getting the keycard, you'll then be able to get into the train. Upon entering it though, you'll have to quickly disable a silent alarm. After you've found and disabled the silent alarm, you'll have to wait a moment or so for Shade to re-enable the power supply for the train. Once the train's back up and running, you'll have to do a unique hacking minigame on a terminal at the front of the train to enable a security override, letting you gain access to the train's controls. I don't exactly have an idea for what the minigame could be exactly, but maybe something along the lines of one of the hacking minigames from GTA 5 would be cool. Once you're done with the hack, the train's controls are re-enabled and the escape is ready. For the next heist, I wanted to try and implement one of New York's greatest landmarks, Central Park. The issue with Central Park though is that the entire appeal of it is that it's nothing, just an oasis of nature within a concrete jungle. So what is there to actually steal? After looking around the park for something interesting though, I found Belvedere Castle. Being built in 1872, Belvedere Castle was constructed as a place to simply enjoy the scenic views of Central Park. Nowadays the castle is used as a visitor centre for the park, a gift shop, and is still used for its original purpose as just a nice place to view the park from. However, in 1919, the US Weather Bureau converted the castle into being a weather station and had offices added inside the castle, but then they moved out of the castle in the 1960s. This is going to be the basis for the heist, being that in the Payday universe, the Belvedere Castle is still used as a weather station to this day, or at least that it seems like it on the surface. There'd be experimental weather affecting technology that's being developed and is hidden inside the weather station, and it could cause a lot of damage if it got into the wrong hands. However, there is a certain person who would pay a very pretty penny in order to make sure that the US has constantly great weather. That person would be none other than the Elephant, who would be returning and contracting this heist. Sure, he's a senator over in DC, but as someone who has major political interests and has worked with the Payday gang before, he'd definitely be interested in something that could massively benefit the country as a whole. So, the Payday gang are tasked to go into this weather station, find out what device is the functional prototype, as well as to completely wipe any and all information inside that's tied to it. This heist is very obviously meant to be a homage to Big Oil, similarly to how Houston Breakout was a homage to Hoxton Breakout. Of course, some heavy creative liberties are going to have to be taken with the map design of this heist, as the castle is actually quite small in reality, and would have to be made much larger for it to be an enjoyable map to play around. It'd also be a similar situation for cover, as unsurprisingly a literal park isn't that good in terms of cover, same as with the patio area outside the castle. To start off with, you'd begin the heist outside the castle itself. If you're immediately to mask up, you're able to just bust through the windows into the castle, as the doors are locked from the outside. Your next objective would be to unlock the basement lab, really wearing its Big Oil inspiration on its sleeve, I know. To open up the lab, you're going to have to breach through a heavily reinforced door. After all, they really don't want anyone to get their hands on this tech. So, Bal's going to come in and drop a thermal lance that you'll set up on the door to breach it. After he comes in and drops the bags, you'll set the drill up on the door and get it running. Of course, the thermal lance will start to run low on oxygen, but you'll be able to find extra oxygen stashed in rooms throughout the castle. While you're holding out in the castle defending the drill, you'll also have to try and figure out what properties the correct prototype will have. It'll be a mix of both physical clues, like on whiteboards and pieces of paper, but also digital clues that you'll have to find on computers. Of course, since the alarm is tripped, you'll have to disable the network lockdown to access the computers, like you do in Boys in Blue. Once the basement's open though, you're free to go into the lab and start looking around at the prototypes. In the lab there'll be multiple desks with prototypes on them. Surrounding them will be papers and terminals which you'll have to compare to the clues you saw upstairs in order to deduce which one is the correct prototype. Upon picking up a prototype, you'll be able to light a flare so that Bile can come in to pick it up. Similarly to the original Big Oil, you'll only be able to put in one prototype at a time due to how heavy they are, and there'll be a period of waiting you'll have to do so that Shade can ensure it's the correct prototype. If it's not the right one, Bile will come in a few moments later so you can put another one in, and will continue to do so until the correct prototype is found. Once the correct one is found though, your last objective will be to completely wipe the station of any and all research that's been done towards this technology. This will firstly be done by plugging Shade into the network so that she can upload a worm into the Weather Bureau system, completely wiping all of the data related to it. Then lastly, you'd have to set the downstairs lab up in flames using something flammable that you'd find inside the castle. Once the lab is alight and the systems are wiped, you've got to wait for Bar to come back in. When he returns though, the escape is ready. The heist will be fairly similar in stealth. Firstly, you can tackle entering the castle in two main ways, climbing up to the top of the spire and making your way inside through a window, or grabbing a keycard off a guard patrolling outside to open up the doors. Once you're inside the castle though, you'll have to re-enable the lab door security controls, which can be done by finding the power room inside the castle and then simply pulling the door's power back on. After the security controls are re-enabled, you'll have to track down an RFID tag to open up the lab door, which can be found in a safe hidden around some of the offices in the castle. While you're sneaking around the offices, you still have to find clues regarding the prototype. Once you've gone into the lab, you have to pick up a prototype and then get it to Twitch, who'll be waiting outside on the road that you'd have to climb on down to. Twitch will then drive off and get checked by Shade, but will take longer to do so than Bile because of the New York traffic. You'll again have to upload a worm into the network, but this time around you'd have to use remote explosives dropped off by Twitch to rig the lab to blow up after you escape. Once the network's taken down and the explosives are rigged to explode, you're free to head on over to Twitch and escape. The next heist in the campaign takes place in the iconic heart of New York, Times Square. For what it's worth, Times Square is specifically the place that made me realise I wanted more landmark-based heists in Payday 3, as playing on the Times Square venue in Guitar Hero World Tour with the Payday gang modded into it made me realise just how cool it would be for a heist location. The issue with Times Square though is that there's not actually much there in terms of valuable places. However, Broadway is decently close to it, which gave me an idea. The idea being for the Payday gang to have a performing arts theatre in the middle of Times Square, as it's full of valuable antique props that a certain collector would pay a lot of money for. That certain collector being none other than August Lindenhurst, or as more people might know him as, Duke, and he'd be contracting the heist. I know I've already reintroduced the elephant, so reintroducing another character might be a little bit absurd, but hey, I think it'd be cool. As per usual, this heist would be approachable in both stealth and in loud. You'd start the heist outside the theatre right in the middle of Times Square, like the really iconic bit, like this part right here. As per usual, I'll start with the loud approach on this heist. Your first objective is to get inside the theatre's hallway, and to do so you'll have to find C4 stashed in bins right in the middle of Times Square. Once you've gotten that C4, you'll have to go back inside and then place it down on the doors into the hallway, wait for it to blow up, and then make your way into the rest of the theatre. Inside the theatre there'll be 3 auditoriums, one of which will have access to the storage room in the backstage area. Once you've discovered which auditorium has the storage room, you'll have to set up a computer hack on the stage manager room's PC to disable the door's security. During the PC hack, you'll have to defend both the computer and some power boxes in the general area. Once the hack is done and the storage room is open, you'll be met with various valuable props that you can take as extra loot, but they aren't the antiques that Duke is after. Those antiques are hidden inside a vault, which you'll have to set up a drill on. After the drill's finished up, you'll have to bag up the loot. Escaping out of Times Square isn't going to be easy though. Bile can't come in with the chopper because of how claustrophobic it is, and Twitch can't come in with the van either because the cops have the entire place surrounded. But I've only said about helicopters and vans, and where we're going, we're not going to need either of them. Of course, we're going to be escaping by the sewers. Look, if there's one thing I know about New York is that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live in the sewers beneath it, and it's the entire reason why I thought of a sewer escape in the first place, and I'm being completely serious when I say that. So, you'd have to push your way back out of the theatre and towards one of the multiple manhole covers in Times Square, which will lead to the sewers where Twitch will be with his boat. After securing the required antiques, as well as any extra props you want to, you're free to escape. For stealth on this heist, you'll first have to gain access to the hallways in the theatre by getting a ticket to open up the doors. You can get a ticket with one of two methods, either going into the ticket office and grabbing one that's just laying around, or by snatching one of a VIP who will have security guards surrounding them. If you're masked up though, you'll just be able to make your way into the hallway by going through some vents in the ticket office. Once you're in the hallway, you'll have to try and figure out which auditorium has access to the storage room. In Loud, you'd be able to just run behind the stage curtain, but since you can't do that in stealth as there's performances going on, you'll have to try another method. You'll have to get into the stage manager room at the back of the auditorium, where there will not only be the stage manager themselves, but the tech they manage, including a computer which has emails on it. Reading the emails, you'll learn about if the auditorium you're currently in has the storage room, and if it doesn't, you'll have to check another one. Once you've figured out where the storage room is, you'll have to cause a distraction to get everyone to leave the auditorium. It'll be random which method you get, ranging from causing the pyrotechnics to go off, pulling the lights, or just giving an intercom message. After everyone's left the auditorium, you're free to head backstage and open up the storage room, which can be done with a wirebox hack, and you'll find the boxes in the theatre hall itself, as well as the hallway outside. After the storage room is opened up, you'll have to get a QR code to open up the vault, which can be obtained by hacking the manager's phone, who'll be roaming around the entire theatre. Once you've gotten the QR code and opened the vault up, you're free to loot and then make your way to Twitch in the escape van, and it'll be parked outside the theatre near a fire escape accessible from the halls, just so you're not having to walk all the way out the front. After securing all the required loot though, you're free to leave. To mark the final heist in this campaign, we're going to go after the Statue of Liberty. Yeah, the thumbnail wasn't clickbait, I actually do have a heist idea for the Statue of Liberty. Sort of. The Statue of Liberty honestly needs no introduction. Starting construction in France back in 1876 and being finished in 1884, the Statue of Liberty is the New York landmark, being dubbed as a national monument in 1924 and then being designated as being a World Heritage Site in 1984. The statue doesn't serve any practical purpose, but I'll be damned if I say that it doesn't look cool. It should be fairly obvious though that stealing the statue itself is downright impossible, with it being over 90 meters tall and weighing over 200,000 kilograms. Since we can't go after the statue as a whole, we'll be going after its torch instead. The setup for the heist would be fairly simple, being that the torch is scheduled to be taken away for repairs due to it just being worn down throughout the years. While it's in this vulnerable state, it makes for a perfect opportunity for the Payday gang to steal it, grabbing it for Duke. I know he's an art collector in the sense that he collects paintings, but honestly, who would pass up on the Statue of Liberty's torch? Seriously, who would? Like every other heist we've had so far, this heist will be completable in both stealth and in loud. To start the heist off, you'd begin outside the visitor center at the base of the Statue of Liberty. Similar to how parts of Grand Central and Belvedere Castle had to be scaled up for the sake of map layout, the Statue of Liberty and its foundation will be scaled up too. Yeah, it feels a bit strange that the literal Statue of Liberty has to be scaled up, but with how we'll be playing around it later, we are going to need it. In loud, your first objective will be to override security doors using a control panel hack to access the staircase up to the top of the statue. Once you've gotten the security doors open, you'll have to set up a zip line you'll find in a storage room to get up to the top, as nobody actually wants to walk all the way up those stairs. After getting up to the top of the statue, you'll have to make your way to the scaffolding surrounding the torch through an exit in the crown itself. Scaffolding is a bit of a strange environment to play around. The scaffolding back in Greenbridge made for an incredibly claustrophobic environment, and you didn't have much in the way of cover either. So the scaffolding here would be much more open and have cover, basically just how you would normally design an area, but it'd still somehow act as structurally sound scaffolding. It still of course have the things that make scaffolding an interesting environment to play around in the first place though, like multiple levels. Once you're on the scaffolding though, you'll have to signal in bile to make drops of thermite, as you'll need to melt the torch to separate it from the hand. You'll make one initial placement of the thermite, but as it continues to burn, it'll slowly make its way all around the hand, fully separating it from the torch. While the thermite is going, the wind will slowly start to kill the thermite's flame, so Bile will come in and make repeat drops so you can keep it burning. It's not just the wind you'll have to worry about though, as sabotage squad units will come in with fire extinguishers which can kill the thermite. If the thermite gets killed though, you'll have to start it back up again by using and then setting up another bag of thermite on it. Before Bile comes in though, you'll have to clear the area out, including not just the enemies on the scaffolding, but also the snipers set up in helicopters surrounding the statue. After they've been cleared out, Bile will come in and you'll attach the torch to the helicopter using hooked ropes. With all that being done, it's now time to escape, but it isn't going to be that easy. We won't be able to just go back down and leave through the visitor center, as the cops have locked the security doors. So, you'll have to grab a parachute stashed inside the crown and just jump. Once you've landed, you'll have to make a mad dash towards the docks, pushing through dozens of cops, fighting tooth and nail to get to Twitch's boat. After you make it through and you're at the boat though, you escape. If you're tackling the heist in stealth, it starts out pretty similarly. You'll first need to disable the security door, but this time by doing a wirebox hack. Once the doors are open, you'll have to grab a zipline bag to make your way up to the top of the crown. In the scaffolding, there'll be documents scattered around that you have to shift through in order to get information regarding the maintenance crew that'll be picking up the torch later. After getting all the required information, you'll have to go back downstairs and enter the staff office, making a call pretending that the actual helicopter is coming in to pick the torch up, when in reality it's just Bile. With the call made, Bile starts to fly over, but a handful of extra guards move up to the scaffolding to oversee the pickup. Since the workers are all on their lunch break at the moment, that means that you'll have to find a blowtorch and separate the torch from the hand yourself. It'll take a while, and you have to keep an eye out for guards patrolling around. Once the torch is fully melted though, Bile comes in and you'll have to attach it to the helicopter. After that, Bile flies off with the torch, and you're free to head downstairs and make your way out of the visitors center. Then you'll make your way towards the docks, where Twitch will be waiting with the boat to make your escape. And that's it, marking the end of my entirely theoretical Year 2 DLC campaign. Obviously, I don't imagine we'll be getting heists like these in the Year 2 campaign just because I made a video saying I wanted them. But you know, if anyone from Starbreeze is watching and they want to get in touch, you know how to hit me up. Being actually serious though, if you would like to see heists like these, be sure to talk about it. The best way we can actually get heists like these is to let Starbreeze know that we want them, and that's kind of why I made this video, to try and get the community discussion around it rolling, as I, and I imagine many other people, would really like to see some heists based around New York landmarks. Of course, I hate to beg, but if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe as I put a lot of time and effort into this video, and maybe look up some pictures of sea otters while you're at it. They're pretty cute, and I think you'd enjoy them. As usual though, I've been Cookie Dough, and have a good one.